Chevrolet just killed an engine that's only been alive for 6 years. And normally, that would be bad news. But what they replaced it with just broke a record that Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Dodge have all chased and never touched. I'm going to tell you that number in about 60 seconds. But first, I need you to understand why Chevrolet did something that, on paper, makes absolutely no sense in 2027. Every other automaker right now is going smaller. Smaller displacement, more turbos, more electrification. Mustang did it, Nissan did it. Even Ferrari's turbocharging engines that used to scream to 10,000 revolutions per minute naturally aspirated. So when Chevrolet sat down to redesign the heart of America's supercar, the obvious move was to shrink the engine and slap on some boost. Instead, they went the other way. They made it bigger. Here's the old math. The outgoing LT2 in the C8 Corvette was a 6.2-liter V8. No turbo, no supercharger, 490 horsepower. Solid engine, did its job for 6 years. But solid wasn't the assignment anymore. Here's the new math. The LS6, 6.7 liters. Still naturally aspirated, no turbo, no supercharger. Still just displacement and airflow doing the work the old-fashioned way. 535 horsepower. And 520 pound-feet of torque. That torque number is the one I promised you. It is officially the highest torque output ever recorded from a naturally aspirated V8 in a production car. Not from a supercar costing $400,000. From a Corvette Stingray that starts around $73,000. So now the real question. Is this genius? Or is it just nostalgia wearing an engineering badge? Let's find out together. Because I went digging into exactly what Chevrolet built here, and there's a detail coming up in about 2 minutes that honestly changed my opinion on this engine completely. First, the name. LS6 is not a random string of letters. Chevrolet has used that badge exactly twice before in 72 years. Once on a monster 454 cubic inch big block in the muscle car era, and once on the C5 Corvette Z06 in the late 90s, one of the most beloved Corvette engines ever built. Putting LS6 on this new motor is Chevrolet saying out loud that this engine belongs in that bloodline. That's a bold claim. Keep it in your back pocket because we're about to test whether they earned it. And here's a detail most car channels are going to skip entirely. This engine is built in Flint, Michigan. That's the exact city where the first ever Chevy small block V8 was built back in 1954. Production left Flint in 1999. 27 years later, it's back. If that sounds like a footnote to you, fine. But to me, that's a company putting its money where its mouth is instead of just printing a badge and hoping nobody checks. Okay, time for the engineering. And I promise I'm not going to bury you in spec sheet numbers without telling you why each one matters. Bigger bore, longer stroke. That's it. That's the whole secret behind the torque record. A 4-inch bore, a stroke just under 4 inches. Bigger cylinders, more room for combustion, more raw force pushing the pistons down. This is literally the oldest trick in V8 history, and Chevrolet leaned all the way into it instead of running from it. Compression jumped to 13-1. For a naturally aspirated engine, that's aggressive. That's part of the reason this thing makes huge torque without a turbo ever needing to spin up first. No lag, no waiting. You press the pedal, the power's just there. And here's the piece that actually flipped my opinion on this whole engine. Fuel delivery uses dual injection, direct injection, and port injection working together, feeding through a massive 92mm throttle body. Why does that matter to you, the driver? Because it means this engine isn't just built to make a big number once on a dyno for a press release. It's built to make power smoothly, everywhere, in real driving. Idling in traffic, merging on the highway. Then, 10 minutes later, wide open on a back road. One of GM's own engineers put it perfectly, and I'm paraphrasing here. The goal wasn't an engine that only wakes up at 8,000 RPM on a racetrack once a year. The goal was an engine that gives you real torque the second you touch the throttle, so daily driving feels effortless, and the top end is simply there, waiting, whenever you actually want it. That's the opposite philosophy of most modern performance engines. which chase a peak horsepower number and make you work for it. Chevrolet flipped that on purpose, and that's the detail that made me stop asking, "Is bigger better?" and start asking a smarter question instead. Quick gut check before we move on, because this matters more than it sounds like. Redline sits at 6,600 revolutions per minute. That's actually lower than a lot of high-strung sports car engines out there. And normally, a lower redline gets read as a downgrade, like the engine's holding something back. But that's not what's happening here. Chevrolet isn't chasing a screaming top end with this particular V8. They're chasing torque you can feel in your chest at 3,000 RPM, not 8,000. That's a completely different kind of fast. It's the kind of fast that doesn't need a racetrack to prove itself. It shows up the moment you merge onto a highway on-ramp. Which brings us to the part almost nobody's talking about yet. This engine isn't just in one car. It's in three. The Stingray gets it standard. The returning Grand Sport gets it. And the brand new Grand Sport X, replacing the old E-Ray, takes that same LS6 and bolts an electric motor to the front axle. Total output? 721 horsepower. Full all-wheel drive. Same base engine, scaling from an entry-level sports car all the way to a genuine 4-digit horsepower missile once you count the rest of the lineup. And Grand Sport itself isn't just a trim level. It's one of the most storied names in Corvette history, tracing back to purpose-built race cars from the 60s. For 2027, it gets the wide-body look shared with the Z06, adaptive Magna-Ride suspension, a rear axle ratio tuned specifically for launching hard off the line, and, for the very first time ever on a Grand Sport, an available center exit quad exhaust, a feature that used to be Z06 exclusive only. Even the hash marks moved. They used to sit on the front fenders. Now they're on the rear, a quiet nod to the fact that the engine lives behind you now, not in front of you. And here's a stat that puts all of this in perspective. The base 2027 Stingray, with this brand new record-setting engine, still starts under $75,000. GM itself is calling this the highest torque output of any naturally aspirated production V8 in history, a claim that, when you line it up against the competition, nobody's currently in a position to challenge. That's not hype. That's the current state of the segment. So back to the question that opened this video. Does this actually change everything? Here's my honest answer. No fence sitting. The old LT2 didn't need replacing to stay competitive. It was already embarrassing cars that cost 3 times as much. Chevrolet didn't build the LS6 because they had to. They built it to make a statement, at the exact moment the rest of the industry is walking away from the naturally aspirated V8. And they didn't stop at one engine either. This LS6 sits alongside the screaming, high-revving LT6 in the Z06, and the twin-turbo 1,250 horsepower LT7 Gemini in the ZR1X. 3 completely different personalities, 3 completely different philosophies, 1 small block family tree. That's not just an engine update. That's Chevrolet betting the future of their flagship sports car on the idea that raw, naturally aspirated displacement still has a place in 2027 and beyond. Now, I want to know where you land. Some of you are all about the number. 535 horsepower, 520 pound-feet, most torque ever from a naturally aspirated V8. Case closed. Others think that argument is already outdated, that efficiency and smaller turbocharged engines are simply where performance is heading, no matter how good this V8 sounds. Tell me which side you're on in the comments. I read every single one. Before you go, one last thought. Chevrolet didn't just build a bigger engine here. They built a bet. A bet that when you strip away the marketing and the horsepower wars, drivers still want to feel a V8 push them back into the seat the old-fashioned way. Whether that bet pays off is going to play out over the next few years, one dyno test and one review at a time. But for right now, on paper, in the metal, this is the most complete small block Chevrolet has ever built. And if you want to see this LS6 go head-to-head against the screaming LT6 and the twin-turbo LT7, spec for spec, sound for sound, that comparison is right there. Go watch it next.